What happens when a police chief's son decides the law doesn't apply to him and attacks a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran in front of witnesses in broad daylight? This smug young man strutted into my courtroom, convinced his father's reputation would shield him from everything. But when I forced his father to choose between loyalty to his son and loyalty to justice, what unfolded became one of the most unforgettable moments I've ever witnessed on the bench. The defendant stood there grinning as he told me, "My father owns this city. You can't do anything to me, old man." The room went dead silent. What nobody realized was that Police Chief Thomas Cole was seated quietly in the back, watching his son unravel everything he'd spent 35 years constructing. The choice he was about to make would shatter hearts, rebuild faith, and prove that some fathers value their principles more than covering for their children's failures. Before we get into this story, fewer than 5% of you watching are actually subscribed. If you believe in real accountability, in honoring those who served, and in holding the privileged responsible, hit subscribe right now. This story is going to travel far, and you won't want to miss what comes next. It was a frigid November morning, and I was preparing for what looked like a standard assault case. After all my years on this bench, I've processed thousands of cases, but something about this one sat differently with me. The victim was a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran named Robert Martinez. The defendant was 32-year-old Derek Cole, son of the city's own police chief, Thomas Cole. If you're watching this without a membership, you're missing 90% of the stories that never reach the public. Jaw-dropping cases, explosive courtroom confrontations, and verdicts that will leave you stunned. Join now before this story convinces you. The case file painted a deeply troubling picture. 3 days prior, Robert Martinez had been walking his dog through a neighborhood park when Derek Cole, speeding through in his BMW, nearly struck him. When Martinez raised his hand asking him to slow down, Derek slammed his brakes, climbed out, and got in the elderly man's face. According to 3 separate eyewitnesses, Derek shoved Martinez violently to the ground, causing him to strike his head on the pavement. When bystanders rushed to intervene, Derek reportedly shouted, "Do you have any idea who I am? My father is the chief of police. Go ahead and call someone. I dare you." Then he got back in his car and left, abandoning a 70-year-old man bleeding on the sidewalk. Martinez sustained a concussion, 3 fractured ribs, and a broken wrist. He spent 2 nights hospitalized. The entire incident was captured on a nearby security camera, and once the footage circulated on local news, the community erupted in outrage and demanded justice. My courtroom was standing room only that morning. Journalists, veterans advocacy groups, concerned residents, and regular court watchers had all shown up. You could feel the electricity in the air, a collective sense that something significant was about to take place. Here's what nobody in that room knew yet. Police Chief Thomas Cole was sitting in the very last row, dressed in civilian clothes, his badge out of sight. His son had no idea he was there, and the reason he came would leave everyone breathless. At precisely 10:30 a.m., the bailiff called the case, the state versus Derek Michael Cole, charged with assault and battery upon an elderly person. Let me be clear about something. I've been doing this long enough to read a person the moment they step through those doors. And Derek Cole walked in like he was arriving at a cocktail party he'd personally organized. Tailored suit, designer watch catching the light, and that smirk, that self-satisfied, unbothered smirk that immediately told every single person in that gallery exactly who they were dealing with. He didn't look remorseful. He didn't look troubled. He looked inconvenienced. Behind him entered his attorney, Marcus Richardson, one of the city's highest-priced defense lawyers, the kind who makes a career out of keeping wealthy clients insulated from accountability. I've faced lawyers like him throughout my entire career. They believe expensive suits and sharp tongues can override documented evidence. Not in my courtroom. But here's what caught the room's attention first. As Derek passed the row where Robert Martinez sat, wearing his Vietnam veteran cap, his injured wrist supported in a cast, Derek didn't so much as glance at him. No acknowledgement, no flicker of remorse, nothing. That told me everything I needed to know before he ever opened his mouth. I looked up from my notes, and I won't pretend my patience wasn't already being tested. "Mr. Cole," I began, keeping my voice measured, "you are charged with assault and battery upon an elderly individual, specifically Mr. Robert Martinez, a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran. How do you plead?" His attorney shot to his feet. "Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. We believe this is a case of—" I raised my hand. "Counselor, I addressed your client, not you." Mr. Cole, do you have a voice? In my courtroom, defendants speak for themselves. I'm not paying your lawyer's rates. Derek stood, adjusted his jacket with the casual confidence of someone who had never faced a consequence in his life, looked directly at me with that same smirk and said, "Not guilty, Your Honor. This whole thing is ridiculous." The word landed like a stone in still water. I slowly removed my glasses and held his gaze. Anyone who's watched me work knows what that means. When the glasses come off, someone is about to receive a lesson they won't soon forget. Ridiculous, I repeated. Mr. Cole, I have reviewed the security footage. I have read the hospital documentation. I have seen photographs of Mr. Martinez's injuries. Would you like to reconsider how you've just characterized this case? Because I'll tell you what's truly ridiculous. A 32-year-old man attacking a 70-year-old veteran and then standing before me acting as though he's the one being wronged. Derek glanced sideways at his lawyer, who was desperately trying to signal him to stop talking. His ego wouldn't allow it. Your Honor, with all due respect, I cut him off. Let me stop you there. In my experience, when someone opens with all due respect, what follows tends to be the most disrespectful thing they can muster. So go ahead, let's hear it. This has been blown completely out of proportion, Derek continued. Some old guy got in my way. I barely touched him. And now I'm being dragged in here like I'm some kind of criminal. The gallery gasped audibly. Some old guy. He had just referred to a decorated combat veteran, a man who spent 2 nights in the hospital because of him, as some old guy who got in his way. I set my glasses down with deliberate care. My jaw tightened. Every person in that courtroom held their breath. Mr. Cole, I said, my voice calm but carrying every ounce of authority behind it. Before we go any further, do you know who Mr. Martinez is? Derek shrugged. Some guy who was in my way. The disrespect was suffocating. Robert Martinez, seated in the gallery, didn't flinch. He carried the quiet dignity of a man who had survived things far worse than this. But the other veterans present were visibly furious. Frankly, so was I. I stood from the bench and walked around to the front. Anyone familiar with my courtroom knows I rarely do that. When I step down from the bench, it means something. Mr. Martinez, I said, looking directly at the elderly man, would you please stand and tell Mr. Cole who you are? Robert Martinez rose slowly, steadying himself with his good arm. Your Honor, my name is Robert Martinez. I served in the United States Marine Corps from 1968 to 1971. I completed 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. I was awarded the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star for valor. I retired as a firefighter after 3 decades of service. I've called this city home for 50 years, and 3 days ago, he gestured toward Derek without making eye contact. This man assaulted me for no reason other than asking him to slow down in a public park. Complete silence. I nodded respectfully as Martinez returned to his seat, then turned back to the defendant. Mr. Cole, do you grasp what you just heard? You assaulted a decorated combat veteran, a man who risked his life for this country, a man who spent 30 years running into burning buildings to protect strangers, and you referred to him as some old guy who got in your way. You should be ashamed of yourself, and if you're not, I'm going to help you get there. Derek's smirk was fading, but his arrogance still hadn't fully retreated. Your Honor, I didn't know he was a veteran. How could I have known? Mr. Cole, I replied immediately. It should not matter whether he's a veteran or not. Assault is assault, but the fact that you think it would only matter if you'd known his service record tells me everything about your character. You don't get to decide which human beings deserve to be treated with dignity. That is not how this world works, and it is certainly not how my courtroom works. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share. Have you or someone you care about ever been dismissed or disrespected because of their age? This story is about far more than one case. It's about how we treat the people who came before us. Derek's attorney jumped back in, trying to stabilize the situation. Your Honor, my client is young and poorly chose his words, but the evidence will demonstrate. Counselor, I interrupted. I've already seen the evidence. In fact, let's review it together. I suggest you sit down and allow the footage to speak for itself, because the more your client talks, the worse his situation becomes. I signaled the court clerk. The security camera footage appeared on the courtroom monitor. Everyone watched in complete silence as the video showed exactly what took place. Derek's BMW accelerating through the park, nearly clipping Martinez. The veteran raising his hand, Derek skidding to a stop, stepping out of his vehicle and forcefully shoving the 70-year-old man to the pavement, then standing over him, pointing, shouting, walking back to his car and simply driving away. The footage left no room for interpretation. When it ended, I looked at Derek. Still think this is ridiculous, Mr. Cole? Because what I see is a bully, a coward, a grown man attacking someone who could be his grandfather, someone who believes the rules are meant for everyone else. The color had drained from Derek's face. His attorney was whispering urgently, but Derek's pride refused to fully surrender. Your Honor, I was having a rough day. I just received some difficult news. I wasn't in the right headspace. My eyes narrowed. A rough day. Mr. Cole, I have sat on this bench longer than you've been alive. I have seen people appear before me who had lost their employment, their homes, their children. You know what they didn't do? They didn't assault elderly veterans because they were having a difficult morning. Don't insult my intelligence with that excuse. I stepped closer to Derek, closing the distance between us. Let me tell you what I believe happened, Mr. Cole. I believe you have spent your entire life convinced you are exceptional. I believe your father's position has shielded you from accountability your whole life. I believe you have never genuinely faced the consequences of your actions. And I believe you walked into my courtroom today fully expecting that pattern to hold. Am I mistaken? Derek attempted to respond. I raised my hand. I'm not finished. Don't interrupt me. I have dealt with people like you throughout my entire career, people who believe their surname, their father's title, their family's connections make them untouchable. Here is what you are about to learn, Mr. Cole. In my courtroom, none of that carries any weight. What matters here is the law. What matters here is justice. What matters here is treating every human being with the dignity they deserve. And right now, you are failing on every single count. Now here is where the story takes the turn that nobody in that room anticipated. I paused. I looked toward the back of the courtroom, and I said something that stopped Derek Cole's heart. Chief Cole, would you please come forward? Every head in the room turned simultaneously. Rising slowly from the back row was Police Chief Thomas Cole. He had been there the entire time. He had heard every word his son said. He had watched his son perform without an ounce of remorse, and the expression on his face wasn't fury, it was heartbreak. Derek spun around, and for the first time since entering my courtroom, his arrogance collapsed entirely. Dad, what are you doing here? Chief Cole walked down the center aisle, each step measured, each step heavy with the weight of 35 years in law enforcement. He was in his late 50s, gray gathering at his temples, wearing a plain button-down shirt and slacks. No uniform, no badge. Just a father watching his son dismantle everything he'd been raised to stand for. I addressed the chief with genuine respect. Chief Cole, thank you for being here. I understand this cannot be easy. Chief Cole stood at attention, his years of service evident in every inch of his posture. Your Honor, I appreciate being permitted to be present. Derek was unraveling. His attorney looked baffled. The gallery leaned forward. Chief, I continued, your son appears to believe that your position will insulate him from accountability. He has implied repeatedly that because you lead law enforcement in this city, he exists above consequence. I'd like to offer you an opportunity to address that belief directly. The room held its breath. This was the moment, a father forced to choose between instinct and integrity. Chief Cole inhaled slowly. When he spoke, his voice was steady, bald but full of weight. Your Honor, my son is wrong. He has always been wrong about that. I have spent 35 years serving this city. I have arrested drug dealers. I have pursued murderers. I have held corrupt officials accountable. I have put my life on the line to protect the innocent and uphold the law. And not once, not a single time, have I ever believed that my badge gave me or my family the right to violate those same laws. Derek started to speak. Dad, The chief raised his hand. The authority in that single gesture silenced his son instantly. Derek, be quiet. You have said enough. He returned his attention to me. Your Honor, I reviewed the security footage the morning after the incident. I read the hospital reports. I know exactly what my son did to Mr. Martinez. I am here today not as Chief Cole. I am here as Thomas Cole. a father who failed to teach his son the most essential lessons: respect, humility, and accountability. His voice broke slightly. I believed I had shown him right from wrong. I believed I had modeled what it means to serve others, to protect the vulnerable, to treat every person with dignity regardless of their station. But somewhere along the way, I failed. He gestured toward his son. That failure is standing right here. Derek's face crumbled. Tears spilled down his face. Dad, please. Chief Cole turned to face his son, and what he said next, I will carry with me until my final day on this bench. Derek, I love you. You are my son, and that will never change. But love does not mean shielding you from the consequences of your choices. Love means holding you responsible so you can grow into the man you were always meant to be. He turned back to me. Your Honor, I am here to tell you and this court that whatever sentence you determine is appropriate, you have my complete support. My son assaulted a decorated veteran. He showed no remorse. He disrespected this court and everything I have built my life around. He deserves to face the full measure of the law, and I will not stand in the way of that. He paused. In fact, if anything, I would ask you to be firmer than you might otherwise be, because he needs this lesson now before someone else is hurt. I'll say this plainly. I have sat on this bench for decades. I have witnessed the very best and worst of human character. But watching a police chief, a father, stand in open court and ask me to hold nothing back against his own son, that was unlike anything I have ever seen. The courtroom broke into hushed murmurs. Derek was sobbing openly. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Chief Cole's voice became firm. Derek, do you know what I did yesterday? I went to Mr. Martinez's home. I looked him in the eye and apologized to him on your behalf, knowing that no apology could undo what you did. I told him that your actions do not represent this department or this family. And do you know what he said to me? Derek shook his head, tears running down his face. He said, Chief, your son doesn't need protection. He needs help. And he was right. You don't need me to rescue you. You need to stand in what you've done and change. I had been absorbing all of this with a depth of emotion I rarely allow myself to show. Now I spoke, and I'll acknowledge. My voice carried a gravity I don't often feel. Chief Cole, I want to thank you for your courage today. What you have done here, choosing justice over the natural impulse to shield your child, that demands more strength than most people will ever be called upon to find. I turned to Derek. Mr. Cole, do you understand what just occurred? Your father, a man who could have made every piece of this disappear, chose instead to stand here and honor the law. He chose to honor Mr. Martinez. He chose to honor the badge he has worn for 35 years. That is what integrity looks like. Look carefully, because that is the person you should be striving to become. Derek could barely speak. Your Honor, I'm sorry. I was wrong about everything. I nodded. That is the first truthful thing you have said since you walked through my doors. But apologies are cheap, Mr. Cole. Words require nothing. Actions carry consequences. And in my courtroom, tears do not substitute for accountability. What I decided next, I wasn't simply trying to punish this man. I was trying to reach him. That's how I've always approached this work. I'm not interested in simply locking people away. I'm interested in making certain they never need to stand in front of me again. Subscribe right now if you believe in this kind of justice, because what follows is a masterclass in accountability, consequence, and genuine redemption. Derek Michael Cole, I announced, my voice formal and unhurried. I find you guilty of assault and battery upon an elderly person. This is a serious offense, made more serious by the complete absence of remorse you displayed when you first appeared before me. I let the silence hold for a moment. Here is your sentence. You will serve 90 days in the county correctional facility. Upon release, you will complete 200 hours of community service, specifically assigned to work with elderly veterans at the VA hospital. You will attend anger management counseling for a period of 1 full year. You will compose a formal letter of apology to Mr. Martinez, to be read aloud in this courtroom, followed by a direct face-to-face apology delivered to him personally. Derek accepted each condition without resistance. Yes, Your Honor. I'm not finished, I continued. You will also record a video apology to be published on the police department's official social media platforms in which you explain what you did, why it was wrong, and what steps you are taking to make amends. Your father has agreed to facilitate this. Accountability requires sunlight. Furthermore, upon completion of your sentence, you will speak before a class of police academy recruits on the subjects of privilege, accountability, and the consequences of believing yourself exempt from the law. Your father will arrange it. You will share your story, and not to be humiliated, but to spare other young people from traveling the same road. The sentence was demanding. Every element was intentional, crafted not merely to punish, but to transform. That is how I operate. I'm not in the business of simply putting people away. I'm in the business of making sure they never return. Chief Cole spoke up. Your Honor, if I may add something, Derek will also be leaving my home. He is 32 years old. He has been living under my roof, under my protection, under my name. That ends today. It's time for him to stand on his own, to understand that privilege is something you earn, not something you inherit. Derek stared at his father, devastated. Dad, it's time, son, the chief said, his voice fracturing. It's time to grow up. I turned to Robert Martinez one final time. Mr. Martinez, is there anything you'd like to say? The 70-year-old veteran rose slowly, steadying himself. Your Honor, I'm not here for revenge. I simply want this young man to understand that every person he encounters deserves to be treated with respect. Age, title, background, none of it changes that. We are all human beings trying to live with dignity. If he genuinely learns that, then everything that happened will have meant something. The grace in those words silenced an already silent room. Here was a man who had been attacked, hospitalized, and publicly dismissed, and he was offering wisdom instead of anger. In all my years, I have encountered very few people capable of that. It reminded me in the deepest way why I still believe in people. I addressed Derek one final time. Mr. Cole, you heard Mr. Martinez. A man you assaulted is extending you more grace than you have earned. I suggest you spend your time in custody reflecting on that, reflecting on who you want to be, reflecting on whether the man who entered this courtroom today is the man you intend to remain, or whether you want to become someone your father can be genuinely proud of. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. As the officers moved to take Derek into custody, Chief Cole crossed the courtroom and stood face to face with his son. A long moment passed between them. Then the chief did something that brought half the room to tears. He pulled his son into an embrace. I love you, the chief whispered, just loud enough for those nearby to hear, but I love you enough to let you face this. You'll come through it, and when you do, you'll be better. You'll be the man I've always known you could be. Derek wept into his father's shoulder. I'm sorry, Dad, I'm so sorry. I know, son. Now go prove it. The officers led Derek out. Chief Cole stood there watching his son disappear through the courtroom doors, tears moving silently down his face. I watched him, and I thought, this is what real love looks like, not shielding someone from consequences, but standing with them through it. I approached the chief and extended my hand. We shook. Two people who had each spent their lives in service to something larger than themselves. You did the right thing, I said quietly. Chief Cole nodded. Doesn't hurt any less. No, I agreed, but it makes it worth it. Before the room emptied, I made one final statement. Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed today is not simply about one case. It's about the choice every one of us faces when someone we love does wrong. Do we enable them? Do we cover for them? Do we rationalize their behavior? Or do we love them enough, truly love them enough, to hold them responsible? I looked around the room. Chief Cole could have used his influence to make this case disappear. Instead, he chose justice. He chose Mr. Martinez. He chose the values he has spent a lifetime upholding. That is courage. That is integrity. That is what genuine leadership looks like. The courtroom applauded. Veterans were on their feet. Robert Martinez crossed the room and extended his good hand to the chief. Chief, Martinez said quietly, your son is fortunate to have a father like you. The chief shook his hand, too overcome to respond immediately. Mr. Martinez, I am sorry for what he put you through. He'll learn. Martinez looked at him steadily. And when he does, he'll make you proud. I can already see it. 6 months later, Derek Cole walked out of the county correctional facility a changed man. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something quieter and more durable. His 200 hours at the VA hospital had long since evolved into something voluntary, work he continued well past the requirements of his sentence. His personal apology to Robert Martinez was described by both men as one of the most healing conversations of their lives. Martinez became a mentor to Derek, teaching him about service, sacrifice, and what genuine strength actually requires. Derek's video apology was viewed over 3 million times. Young people across the country watched it. They saw what accountability looks like when it's real. They saw what happens when privilege collides with justice. They saw what transformation actually demands. Chief Cole attended every single one of his son's counseling sessions, not because anyone required it, but because he wanted to be present for his son's genuine growth. The relationship that had fractured in that courtroom rebuilt itself slowly on a foundation of honesty that had never quite been there before.